Good morning. Don't mind me as I'm in my robe. I just didn't want to take the time to get ready. I wanted to share with you sort of a transformation that I've experienced within myself and one that I am leaning into and embracing so much more right now. And I'm absolutely loving it. Like, it's been a real game changer, and it's making me also question so many things about myself. So many of my old beliefs, so many of the judgments that I held towards other people, um, and really they were just judgments about myself. So I'll give you a little bit of backstory. For most of my life, I have lived as the athlete and the academic, and I worked so hard at these two things. I dedicated my life and every moment to these two things, and it was really, when it came down to it, it was really coming from a place of insecurity. Now, I was good at both these things, although one caveat is that I didn't believe I was smart. I grew up thinking I was not smart, and I always felt kind of like the outcast because of that. And because of that, like, I did struggle in school. I struggled to test well. I think I just had a lot of test anxiety. So because of that, I studied a ton, like so much, because I was just so afraid of failing, and I was so afraid of doing poorly and being the one who didn't do well in class compared to her peers. So I worked extra hard. With sports, I was good at sports, but I had this expectation that I held for myself that I believed others had of me as well. And I just didn't want to let anybody down. And again, I didn't want to be the one who failed at that. And so I worked so hard at these two things to try and uphold my image, to try and be of a better status. I was so obsessed with how I looked to the world, and I didn't want to be perceived as weak. I didn't want to be perceived as lesser than. I didn't want to, yeah, I didn't, I, it's essentially just that. Like, I just didn't want to be perceived as lesser than. And so I worked so hard at these two things. And I essentially put on this like shield of armor. And that shield of armor was to protect me. And so I thought it was to protect me from other people, which is funny because at the very same time, everything I was doing was dictated by other people and how other people saw me or view things. I like altered myself to that. So even though it was protection, it like didn't even really help at all. It wasn't accomplishing what like I wanted it to accomplish. And yeah, I was in my masculine energy for so much of it. I was in my, but like the wounded masculine, not even a healthy masculine. So everybody has masculine and feminine energy. That doesn't mean male or female or anything like that. And the wounded masculine energy is about like organization and structure. It tends to be like the go-getter and the planner and all of that. And I know there's more to it, but just in general, the wounded masculine will try and control everything. Will just, try and yeah, just try and control everything and constantly be fixated on like how everything else is happening around them, and doesn't really lend to like much freedom. So I was operating under that energy for pretty much my whole life. And I viewed feminine energy, I viewed the feminine as more weakness, because that was what was demonstrated to me. And that was how women were talked about. And I know feminine energy isn't women, but it's just how it was, like it was the relationship that I was seeing. I viewed it as like weak, and so I didn't want to be that, so I never let that in. And again, part of like the athlete identity is like not showing emotion, being strong, being tough, being all these things. And so that's what I like strived for, was to be strong and be tough and be able to handle it all, and not let anything get to me, and not let anything bug me. And that's what I was doing. But it was all a facade because deep down everything bothered me. Everything bothered me. It hurt me. I was feeling hurt. I was feeling triggered. I was hyper emotional because I didn't let anything out. I shoved everything down. And then all of a sudden, like, we all have like a bucket, and we can only go so long, like, operating in that way before our bucket overflows. And for me, I had these like big eruptions. Like, I would just be so emotional, and the reaction didn't ever really match what was going on. Like, there was a link for sure, but it didn't really match what was going on. And that's because there were so many layers below that I didn't address. And what was happening in real time wasn't like, it was just the trigger to like set me off, but it wasn't the thing that was the problem. It was because of like the old wounding that I would be triggered in that way. So that was my wounded masculine coming out. And the suppression of the feminine as well. And one thing that I've been really leaning into in the last like few years, but more so right now, I'm bringing a lot of awareness and attention to it, is the feminine energy. And I've realized how much I suppressed her. And I realized this because I would see other women and how they hold themselves, how they embody themselves, and their connection with their bodies, and how they move, and just like, it's so different. And I could not see myself in that. I really struggled to see myself in that. And part of it made me like cringe a little, and then part of it also made me be like, oh, I wish I could be like that. Like, I wish I had that side to me. We all have these sides to us. I firmly believe that. I think there's like a piece of that in everybody to a degree. Like, I think it's on a spectrum, but I like turned the tap off. Like, I shut the hose off to that part of myself where, I created this like energetic wall in my body. And when you create that like energetic wall in your body, I don't know if you can feel it. I can feel it. It's like I just tense up. And again, it's like me creating this barrier between me and the rest of the world as a form of protection. But I like tense up. And then what happens when you tense up is you can't let go. You can't experience freely. You can't just be. You think of like, I'll almost like relate it to like dance. And when I see these women and in like photos or video, and they're just like moving so smoothly and like more like fluid, there's no tension there. they're just letting that come out of them. They're letting that go. They're letting that come through. But when you create tension in your body, when you create that wall, you create tension in your body, do you think you can be fluid? Absolutely not. It's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel clunky. It's going to feel robotic. And that's sort of my experience of myself battling my more feminine energy. And so lately, I've been exploring more of that, like that letting go, that more feminine energy. I'd say it started maybe like a few years ago where my nervous system really started to calm down a lot more, and I started to feel more safe with myself and in my body. But I didn't really like draw the link. Like I wasn't really consciously thinking about it in this way. And it started to feel like I started to notice myself as a more feminine human, embracing my more feminine side, not being afraid of my emotions, not being afraid of my quirks, not being afraid of my body, not being afraid of all these things. And don't get me wrong, it is a work in progress. You know, like there's always new things I think you're figuring out with yourself. And at least that's true for me. And I love that part. I think it's a lot of fun, to be honest. And how I do that is I pay attention to my triggers and my judgments. So yeah, I feel like for me, my judgments say everything. And that's what I know is like with a lot of my clients as well. And what I'm really loving right now is that balance between the masculine and the feminine. It's like this beautiful dance between like the structure and the organization and the free flow and the wild. And it feels just very freeing inside. Like there's not a lot of tension inside, and I get to follow like my intuition and my gut, and I get to take control where I can take control, right? You still can take control, but the problem comes where you're trying to like control literally everything else around you. And really, we don't have any business doing that. So I just want to share this because maybe some of you can see that in yourself. And we aren't really meant to control this. Somebody said this to me the other day, and I was like, oh, this is fantastic. We shouldn't be trying to control our own like evolution. We try to control like what our evolution is and what our transformation is and who we're evolving into. Like we're like, oh, I want to become this person. I want to embrace this aspect and whatever. And we try to like really like streamline it and direct it. But when we do that, we limit ourselves. We limit our growth. We limit, sorry, I have hiccups. We limit our potential. We limit where we can go. And we actually shut the door on opportunities. And that's something that I've like been playing with so much in the last few years, is like just being open to whatever is out there and whatever opportunities are out there. Because there's a lot. And where we get into trouble is when we start to try and control things, and we think we know what we need. We think we know what we need, but the reality is we don't even know everything that's out there. There's so much out there. So what if you opened yourself up to just being fluid and being open and releasing that need to control in all parts of your life, and see what comes into your life. See what comes in, because you never know, you know? You never know, you know? You might receive something even greater. You might receive something that you didn't even know you needed, and then it shows up at your door and you'll be like, thank you, God. Anyways, I'm gonna leave it at that because it's getting a little long. I hope you have a beautiful day. Let go.